We all expect age to change us. But what if the most noticeable changes aren't from time itself, but from habits we never thought to question? Because it turns out that what truly ages a person isn't just grey hair or a few lines on the forehead. It's how you carry yourself day after day. And yet so many of us unknowingly adopt behaviours that signal to the world we're older than we really are. Not because we've aged poorly, but because we've stopped paying attention to the little things, like how we move, how we speak, how we present ourselves in a room. Because here's the truth most people never hear. Looking older isn't always about biology. It's about energy. And energy is something you either cultivate or drain. And the scary part is this. The habits that make you look older often masquerade as normal, comfortable routines. But when you put them under the microscope, they reveal something deeper. Not just how others see you, but how much of yourself you've stopped bringing into the world. And this video is about those 6 quiet habits that seem small but speak loudly. Habits that slowly dim your presence, shrink your confidence, and whisper a lie. That the best version of you is already behind you, but it's not true. Because the best version of you doesn't disappear with age. It just waits for you to show up again with intention. So let's start by exposing these habits, not to judge, but to reclaim something essential. Your ability to look and feel like the sharp, engaged, and fully alive person you still are. 1. Neglecting personal grooming. Small lapses like overgrown nails, unkempt hair, or wearing the same clothes daily can make a person look older and less vibrant. Regular grooming boosts both appearance and self-confidence. It often starts with a single skipped haircut or the choice to wear that same soft shirt 3 days in a row because it's comfortable and no one's coming over anyway. And then quietly, slowly, grooming habits that once anchored your sense of self start to erode. Not out of laziness, but out of habit, out of fatigue, out of the mistaken belief that effort is something you earn only when people are watching. But here's the truth that stings. The world reads your appearance long before it hears your voice, not because it's shallow, but because we are wired to interpret visual signals for confidence, presence, and vitality. And when you start letting grooming go, letting nails overgrow, letting your clothes fade, ignoring skincare, it's not just your looks that shift, it's the energy you transmit. And the saddest part is, most people don't even realize it's happening, because comfort becomes a cocoon and eventually a camouflage, and suddenly your outside no longer reflects the spark that still flickers inside. Like Michael, 67, who stopped trimming his beard after retirement and wore the same faded polo almost daily, saying, "I'm not trying to impress anyone." But what he didn't notice was how his posture began to droop, how people stopped including him in photos, how even his grandkids asked, "Are you feeling sick, Grandpa?" Not out of rudeness, but concern, because he didn't look like himself anymore. And when he finally shaved, put on a crisp button-up, and showed up to his friend's anniversary dinner, someone said, "You look 10 years younger." And it wasn't just the clothes, it was the return of presence, the message his face finally sent again. I still care, because grooming isn't vanity, it's agency. It's a quiet promise you make to yourself that you're still here and you still matter. 2. Speaking too loudly or interrupting. Often caused by unnoticed hearing loss, speaking too loudly or dominating conversations can seem overbearing. Paying attention to how others react and checking hearing health can help. There's a subtle moment when someone leans back during a conversation, not because they're bored, but because the volume of your voice has overtaken the room, and maybe you didn't notice, because no one told you that hearing loss creeps in quietly, like fog over a familiar landscape. And so you compensate without knowing, by speaking louder, by filling silence, by talking over others not to dominate, but to stay connected. And the irony is, what feels like reaching out begins to push people away, not because they're impatient, but because the rhythm of connection has shifted, and suddenly you're the person people brace for rather than lean toward, like Marlene, 72, who never realized she was finishing people's sentences until her daughter finally said, "Mum, you don't listen anymore. You just prepare to respond." And it stung, not because it was cruel, but because it was true. And it wasn't her fault. But it was her responsibility to notice, because loudness can be mistaken for intensity, and interruptions can be mistaken for ego, when really, underneath it all, is just a deep longing to feel heard. And here's the solution. No one talks about. Pause more, listen longer, and if people start speaking softer around you, take it as a cue, not an insult, to check your hearing or retune your presence, because your wisdom only lands if your delivery invites others to stay. And presence isn't about volume. It's about resonance. And resonance is born in silence, in space, in the trust that your words don't need to rush in. They will be heard when they're ready. 3. Wearing outdated or ill-fitting clothes. Clothing that is baggy, faded, or decades old can signal disengagement. Updating a few wardrobe pieces to better-fitting, cleaner styles improves how others perceive you. At first, it's just a favourite cardigan that's a little stretched out, or a pair of shoes that haven't been replaced in years because they're still fine. And then quietly, a pattern forms. One that says, not, "I've aged gracefully," but, "I've stopped updating." And it happens not because of laziness, but because of comfort, familiarity, maybe even fear. Because stepping into something new sometimes requires stepping into a mirror you're not ready to face. But here's the truth. People rarely tell you. Your clothing is a language. And when you dress in pieces that belonged to a version of you from 10 or 20 years ago, the world doesn't see nostalgia. They see resignation, like Richard, 74, who wore the same navy windbreaker and khakis to every event for 5 years, until one day at a friend's funeral, someone asked if he was okay. Not because of grief, but because he looked pale, slumped, and invisible. And it was only later, when his granddaughter surprised him with a fitted blazer and a bold patterned scarf, that he realized how differently people responded, how heads turned, compliments flowed, and even his own posture changed, because dressing well isn't about vanity. It's about participation. It's saying, "I'm still here." And you don't need to be trendy or spend a fortune. Just wear clothes that reflect the person you are now, alive, aware, and adapting. Not clinging to an older version of yourself or shrinking from the one you're becoming, because the shape of dignity is often first seen in the silhouette of self-respect. 4. Complaining or criticizing. Too much constant negativity, even about small things, can drain conversations and push people away. Balancing criticism with curiosity and appreciation helps maintain positive relationships. There's a heaviness that enters the room before a word is spoken, a sigh, a sharp glance, a familiar tone that makes people brace themselves. And it's not your face, not your hair, not your age that pushes them back. It's the weight of your words. Because nothing pulls energy from a moment faster than habitual negativity. And sometimes it's not even about you. It's about pain unspoken, disappointments stacked over time, the slow bitterness of feeling unseen or unheard. And so it slips out sideways. The complaint about the server, the critique of someone's outfit, the passive dig at your own reflection, and what feels like just being honest becomes a pattern of subtracting rather than adding, like Eleanor, 69, who found herself increasingly alone at family dinners, not because people didn't love her, but because they felt drained after every visit. And it wasn't until her teenage grandson said, "Grandma, why don't you ever say anything good about anyone?" that she paused long enough to see herself clearly, and in that pause, she didn't feel shame. She felt sorrow, not for her behaviour, but for how long she'd let her take the microphone. And what followed wasn't a perfect turnaround, but a small, steady shift. She started complimenting her grandkids' effort, thanking the mailman, noticing flowers instead of just weeds, and suddenly her presence softened. Her voice welcomed rather than warned, because positivity isn't about being fake. It's about choosing where to focus your energy, and aging with grace isn't just about skin tone or muscle mass. It's about becoming the kind of presence people gravitate toward, not tiptoe around, because the deepest beauty lives in how people feel after you leave the room. 5. Ignoring posture and body language. Slouching, shuffling, or avoiding eye contact can make someone seem frail or disinterested. Standing tall, moving with intent, and using open gestures conveys energy and presence. The moment you walk into a room, before you say a single word, people have already read your mood, your confidence, and, often unfairly, your age. Not because they're judging, but because the body speaks first, and if your shoulders are slouched, your steps are hesitant, and your gaze rarely lifts, it sends a message. I've stopped showing up fully, and over time, even the most vibrant minds begin to look faded when the body no longer reflects intention, and what's often mistaken for aging is actually posture gone unnoticed. Habits built from years of leaning into fatigue, pain, or simply forgetting that the spine is a statement, like Harold, 70, who always said he felt just fine, but his shuffle told a different story. His hunch whispered withdrawal, and it wasn't until he started practicing Tai Chi that his wife said, "I can finally see your face again when you walk." And that wasn't poetic. It was literal, because posture isn't just physical, it's psychological. And when you walk tall, when you sit with purpose, when you speak with open hands and steady eyes, people don't just see youth. They see vitality. They feel leadership. They experience connection because body language is the invitation before the words arrive. And whether you're leading a meeting or standing in a grocery line, the way you hold yourself either draws people in or quietly teaches them to overlook you. And dignity, like age, is a posture, something you choose, refine, and reclaim. 6. Bad breath or body odor. As we age, changes in body chemistry and reduced sense of smell can lead to unnoticed odor. Staying hydrated, updating hygiene routines, and cleaning clothes regularly make a big difference. It's the kind of thing no one tells you directly, because they don't want to embarrass you. But they might inch slightly away during a conversation, or hesitate before leaning in for a hug. And what they're reacting to isn't your words or your wrinkles. It's something you can't always detect yourself, because as we age, our senses fade subtly, especially smell. And that means even the most polished appearance can be undone by something as invisible as breath or scent. And while it feels like a small detail, it leaves a lasting impression, like Frances, 73, who kept wondering why her book club slowly stopped meeting at her place, until her sister gently pointed out that the laundry pile in the corner and the faint odour of mildew weren't going unnoticed. And it wasn't that Frances didn't care, it was that she didn't notice, because grief, memory loss, or even simple routine can make us numb to what others still perceive sharply. But the solution isn't shame, it's awareness, and the tools are simple. A new toothbrush, a breathable wardrobe, clean socks, a glass of water before every conversation. Because being well groomed isn't just about what people see. It's about the invisible comfort they feel around you. And dignity doesn't have a scent, but neglect does. And the more we normalize talking about it, the more we empower each other to age with clarity, intention, and grace. because no one wants to be remembered for what lingered after they left the room. And the truth is, you deserve to be remembered for your warmth, your words, and your presence, not a preventable distraction. The world will keep trying to convince you that aging is about disappearance, about retreating quietly into the background, as if wrinkles erase wisdom or silence earns you grace. But the truth is, aging is not a vanishing act. It's a refining fire, a chance to burn away the noise and hold on to what matters, and the way you move, the tone you use, the care you give yourself. They all signal something to the world. I'm still here. And more importantly, I still matter. And yes, aging brings change. Some of it hard, some of it holy. But none of it means you stop being seen, heard, or felt, because beauty doesn't vanish. It evolves, and dignity doesn't fade. It deepens. And the small habits that make you look older than you are don't need to define you. They just need to be noticed, adjusted, and met with compassion, not panic. So whether you're putting on a fresh shirt, pausing before you interrupt, trimming your nails, sitting a little straighter, breathing deeper, or simply smiling because it feels good to show up, know this: the version of you that deserves to be celebrated hasn't passed. It's still unfolding. And if you give yourself permission to show up differently, the world will respond differently too, because you're not meant to fade. You're meant to glow with everything you've lived through, and glow a little brighter with every year.